I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. You know that thing you've been thinking about doing? Yeah, that one. Why not now? Have you ever actually taken the time to ask yourself, what's stopping me? Let's talk it through. This is your chance to give that idea the attention it deserves and take action. Each episode, I have a chat with a fascinating person, from entrepreneurs to athletes, celebrities, my parents, rocket scientists, and all walks of life. We talk through a critical time when they've asked themselves, why not now? We dissect that day or even that moment, step by step. Van Jones is on the show today. He's a CNN political contributor, and he was known for being the voice of reason for both the red and blue states during the 2016 election. Van is also the host of The Messy Truth and author of 2 New York Times bestselling books. He also has a brand new book out called Beyond the Messy Truth. Van is a social entrepreneur, and in 2009, he worked as an advisor for President Barack Obama in the White House. On top of that, he's a Yale-educated attorney, and he's been deemed one of the most influential people in the world, according to Time magazine. I've recently gotten to know Van, and I have a strong appreciation for his ability to serve as a bridge for opposing opinions. We need a lot more of that in this world. This past week has been heartbreaking due to the mass shooting in Las Vegas. I spent a few years living in Las Vegas recently, so the tragedy hit very close to home for me and my community of friends, of course, in the area. After I speak with Van Jones in this episode, I also speak with my friend Jen Byrne, who was at the festival during the shooting. She shares her story and how she's moving forward. My thoughts and condolences go out to everyone impacted by this terrible disaster. Before we get started, let me fill you in on something that's been a lifesaver. It's called Design Pickle. Get it? You're in a pickle because you need a design ASAP, but you don't have the time or maybe even the skill to do it yourself. With Design Pickle, you pay a flat rate monthly fee of $370, and you're given a dedicated designer for all of your needs. And the first 14 days are risk-free. You get a full refund if you cancel in the first 2 weeks. For me, the process has been painless and ego-free. In fact, the Why Not Now posts you're seeing on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and everywhere else were created from my buddies at Design Pickle. I found I was spending so much time resizing images and trying to design things on my own. I didn't have the budget to hire a design firm or an agency, yet it was becoming too expensive for me to budget my own time. I'm now on a first-name basis with my designer. She's learned my style and we're in a groove. Why Not Now listeners get 30% off their first month. You can go to designpickle.com/why not now to redeem the offer. It's a great solution for entrepreneurs. A mentor once said to me, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Do what you're uniquely qualified to do. Design Pickle helps me do just that. Van Jones, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Absolutely. In the spirit of Why Not Now, let's hop in. And can you tell me about a time when you had to ask yourself, why not now?
Well, it's interesting. Really choosing to write this book right now was one of those moments because, this book is really trying to figure out a way to build some bridges and, get past the crazy and past the grief and figure out, a way forward for the country and for people who care about it. But it's not obvious that there's a big audience for that right now because, so much of the conversation is either anti-liberal or anti-Trump. You got to pick your side, pick your team. You got to be for the percent. And I've tried at different times, to kind of like, well, it's a little bit more complicated, and gotten just demolished, in social media. That both sides are just ready to pounce on you. And, but I just decided that I didn't want to be shouted down by my own internal fears of, maybe my progressive tribe misunderstanding me or drawing fire from the right wing. That at a certain point, you just have to say, look, this is not working. We got a big food fight in the country. The people who most need help are not going to get it in red states or blue states. Let me tell you how I see it. And that's really why I decided to, in the middle of what seems like a civil war, to come out with a book like this.
Oh, there's so much I want to dig into, and we'll get there for sure. And I appreciate that you are sticking with your most authentic path, because it isn't easy. And I've witnessed, from both sides, when you are that bridge and you are convening two opposing opinions, you're definitely in the crossfire, but there's no winning sometimes, right?
No, that's right. Yeah.
But, and we'll get to that. But when did you decide to write the book? What was the green light moment? Was it election night?
Well, shortly after election night, I noticed that it was like I was sitting in one chair on the set of CNN. I talked for a couple of hours, and along with my colleagues, and then the next morning, the liberals were very delighted with me because I had talked about how tough it was to be a parent, and trying to explain to your kids how somebody like a Donald Trump, who's a bully, we tell them not to be bullies, who is kind of bigoted, we tell them not to be bigoted, who doesn't seem very prepared or professional, could be the president of the United States. And the liberals just loved that. The conservatives didn't hear that at all. All they heard me say was white lash. Because in the same talk, I talked about how that in part, and I said in part, this was a white lash against a changing country and against a black president, because I think that also is a part of it. I also said that wasn't all of it, and that was, they only heard the insult. And I realized that even when we were all around the same campfire on election night, that we can't hear each other. And we are in a place where, nuance and complexity and the messiness of the truth just can't get through easily. And I realized suddenly that TV wasn't going to give me the opportunity to have the rich and nuanced conversation I wanted to have. I was going to have to write a book. So, of course, immediately people were like, oh, the book's going to be called White Lash, and it's going to, really stick it to Trump, and it's going to be, and honestly, you talk to people, it's like, look, if I wrote a book, Van Jones, White Lash, the case against Trump, I could make a ton of money with a book like that. But I would also be adding to the problem because, yes, there is a dimension of the Trump phenomenon that is very troubling along racial lines, but there's a lot more than that going on. And I've been to Appalachia, and I've been to West Virginia, and I've been to Indiana, and I've talked to Trump voters, and I know it's much more complicated than just that. So I decided, okay, let's write a book. Let's not just do it the easy way. Let's do it the hard way, and let's see if maybe we can have a better conversation.
Well, I remember watching you give that very powerful statement on election night, and then I turned the TV off, and I just had enough for the day. But like so many of us, we woke up and realized, wow, we are so much more divided than we thought. And sometimes when we realize the truth, it is the first step. It's just, at least now we know. I had no clue. But you really entered my radar before the 2016 election and during the campaign season, but you stuck out because you're often serving as a connector, as a bridge for opposing opinions. And that's so unique. And you're not Pollyanna, though. You're tough but respectful and injecting a sense of empathy. And the best proof I see of this, of you serving as this bridge, is looking at the endorsements of this book. You have like the most diverse set of people who are saying, no, read this. And that's from former presidential candidates from both sides that are endorsing your book. You've got Bernie Sanders, you've got Mike Huckabee. I mean, my question for you is, when you get heated and you start to feel yourself maybe leaning more one way or another, but you still want to kind of serve as that connector, how do you maintain that position? Because most of us don't, and most of us can't. How can we learn to do that?
Well, that's a deep question. Look, when you're trying to be a bridge, your feet are still on one side of that chasm. You're just reaching across, and so there's some stuff that I'm just not gonna compromise on. I mean, there's some stuff to me that's just too core. I'm not gonna turn on the Muslims and be a part of persecuting American Muslims. I mean, American Muslims are some of the best Muslims in the world and some of the best Americans that we've got. They got the lowest divorce rate, the lowest crime rate. They got the highest entrepreneurship rate. Every Muslim I know has either got a job or a business or a college degree. Why are we going to attack them? So I'm never going to back off of defending women and LGBT and the African American youth against the criminal justice system. Look, there's some stuff we're just going to fight on. But disagreeing doesn't mean we have to disrespect or disregard. And I think that what's happened now to the country is that we've gotten to the place where we forget, in a democracy, you don't have to agree. Dictatorship, you got to agree. Democracy, you get to disagree. But you don't have to disrespect, and you should always try to understand, even when you disagree. Understanding doesn't mean that you agree. But I want to understand. And when you start hearing people say, I'm just baffled, I'm confused, I can't even understand how these people are thinking this way, that's on us to be able to at least understand. And so when you see me on television, first of all, it may be the first time that you as a viewer has heard a conservative say whatever, outrageous thing they might be saying from your point of view. But before I got on that set, I spent hours reading right-wing blogs. I follow on Instagram and Twitter. I deliberately put in the search term white nationalist, right-wing, conservative, to make sure that my algorithm didn't just push me to more and more liberals to follow. I wanted to make sure that I consciously broke the algorithm so I could follow more people. So I've already heard a lot of these arguments bubbling up through the right-wing media before I ever get on set. So it's not my first time. So when they say something, you might be jumping out of your chair if you're a liberal, but I've already considered it. And it gives me the opportunity to say, well, you know what? I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you on these 2 points, but I still think you're missing these other points, and I want you to hear me on this. And I think it lands a little bit better because even my opponents on the right, I think they know that I'm going to call it fair. And I'm not going to go with a cheap shot, and I'm not going to just try to be right. And it gives me, I hope, a little bit more space to connect.
That's something that I did do after this election, is open up my media outlet consumption beyond what I had been. And in your book, you have a whole list of the diversity and you're encouraging people, right? Follow this person and this person, and just at least be exposed to multiple points of view. And I think that's really cool. That something happened specifically this week. I mean, obviously a huge tragedy took place with the mass shooting in Las Vegas. And I have honestly just felt broken. I lived in Las Vegas recently for a few years, had many friends that were there, had a loss, and just the horror is just unbelievable. And one of my friends shared her story on Facebook about being at the event, and she shared really exactly what happened, almost step by step, as she was dodging bullets and feeling like she was in a video game. And she's running from this gunfire, and she makes a point at the end of her post talking about having tighter gun safety laws. And the next thing you know, someone pops in with a meme and is just berating her, telling her how stupid she is, that that's not going to fix anything. And there was really no empathy. And in my opinion, it wasn't even a constructive conversation, or there was no logic. And this is to someone who, within 24 hours of that time frame, had been really running for their life. In those situations, especially on social, and you're talking about opening up algorithms, what's your best advice to try and, is that even a bridge situation? It seems like it's a...
Look, some people are just assholes. And look, I'm not a Pollyanna. Like, if somebody doesn't have enough respect for somebody who just, almost died, assuming it's even a real person, because sometimes, there are bots and stuff on Twitter. Twitter is completely infected now with non-humans making things worse on purpose. It's like part of, that's not a conspiracy theory. That's true. So assuming it's a real person, listen, you don't have to put up with abuse. You can block people, you can unfriend people, and you can just disengage because it's just not fair. Somebody in that situation is traumatized. That's just not remotely fair. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff, putting up with abuse, putting yourself in a situation where, you're just going to have to bleed out for somebody who doesn't even want to hear. But what I am saying is we still have to create some space somewhere for there to be some constructive dialogue. And the other thing, too, is sometimes we worry too much about words and too little about work. I think we should be finding ways to work together, whether we don't have to talk about all these issues, but when you've got this addiction crisis breaking out, when you've got kids growing up in broken homes, when you've got animals being abused, when you've got all these different things that are going on, let's just work together on some stuff. Because if we can fight about 80% of stuff, but you got to have that 20% where you're working together to keep the inflammation down so you still have a country. And so I am against abuse. I'm against bullying, but I also am against people having so low tolerance in their normal life. Now, let's get away from the most traumatic incident that's going to happen in her life. Let's go to another friend of yours who is on some other issue on some other Facebook page. And the minute somebody says something, that isn't exactly where we want it to be on LGBT issues or on Black Lives Matter, your liberal friend shuts them down and goes all crazy and self-righteous. You see, that doesn't work either. So we've got to be able to draw distinctions. When somebody's been traumatized, that's different. But both sides now have adopted a style of communication that is fundamentally, I'm right and you're wrong. Or worse, we're right and they're wrong. We're not even talking to each other anymore. And that has got to be balanced out. Sometimes that's okay. But what about the conversation that says, only this, I want to understand you and I want you to understand me. I don't want to agree with you. I don't want to convince you. I don't want you to convince me. But I really want to understand. And I want you to understand me. We've got to rebalance the national conversation so that we have room for that as well.
And sometimes I think social media just is not the most productive place, although most of us, that is the forum, right? So it's an interesting dynamic that we have, especially with what we're fed. If people feel it should be illegal to buy the types of guns and equipment that the shooter had, if they want to do something about background check loopholes or just anything, bump stocks, what is reaching out to your local lawmakers really the best step in action? What do you suggest to people who want to voice their opinions?
Look, I think MoveOn.org is going to put up a pretty big campaign again. I definitely think contacting your local elected officials, writing letters to the editor, all those things. I am in an interesting position on this stuff because I would pass all the stuff that people are proposing, and I wouldn't expect it to change a whole bunch. In other words, it's fine to put forward all these reforms, but there's something else that's going on. I'm very tough on my conservative friends on this point because they seem to be more interested in the Second Amendment for mass murderers than the First Amendment for football players who are concerned about Americans being killed unjustly by police. So, you want to pick and choose in the Constitution here that in ways that don't make any sense to normal people. So I don't think that makes sense. That said, I do feel that my conservative friends are not wrong, you could pass a whole bunch of this stuff, and really depraved people will find ways around it. And so we shouldn't give ourselves false comfort that passing all this stuff is going to mean we don't have any more days like the day that we had. Um, the truth is messy, and I think as long as we acknowledge the limits of even our reforms, then I think we leave the door open to a more constructive dialogue, even when we disagree.
Great point. Switching gears for a minute, let's talk about how you met Prince. I love this story in the book, and he was a very good friend of yours. I love the analogy of the Batman and Robin. Will you tell me how you met him?
I was running my mouth about the green job stuff that we were doing in Oakland, getting urban youth jobs, putting up solar panels, and got real passionate about it at a forum that I think Tavis Smiley was doing. And, he heard what I was saying, and he thought it was great. He tried to send me an anonymous check, which is how he did all his charity. But I didn't accept anonymous checks at that time and still don't. And finally, the guy who was trying to get me to take the check said, look, I can't tell you who the check's from, but I can tell you that his favorite color is purple. And then I said, well, you got another problem. I said, because now I'm not going to cash a check, I'm going to frame it. And he thought that was funny, and he got in contact with me. And, we just some people you just connect with. And he changed my life. He took me under his wing. I left the White House under fire for my left-wing past that Fox News just wouldn't shut up about. And I didn't have any place to go, and he took me in, and we wound up building Yes We Code together, which I talk about in the book, and we wound up just doing a lot of great stuff together. But mainly I just learned what it means to be free from him. He was just utterly himself, with no apologies, and he looked at people the way a sober person looks at a drunk person. That was kind of his basic look at people. It was like, what are you doing with your life? You're only here for a short period of time. Be free, be brave, create, speak your mind, be yourself. Who cares? And I miss him every day.
When you left the White House and you then were speaking with Prince, and he suggested you take a little time, make a list of what you want to do, and then get after it, and he would help you. You mentioned that it took you a little bit longer than you thought it would to get to that point. Was there something that happened, a moment a day where you're like, okay, I'm ready to get back in?
Healing doesn't work that way. I was born in 1968 in the rural South. My dad was born in poverty and segregation. He, put himself through college and married the college president's daughter, my mom, and, put his brother through college, his cousin through college. He worked with my mom to put me and my sisters through college. So, I wound up going to Yale, and then I went to the Bay Area, and I'm working on these tough projects, and I'm winning grants, and I'm getting awards, and I write a book, and it's a bestseller, and I go to the White House. And so it's been a sort of upward trajectory for me. And then to leave the White House after only 6 months, under fire, it was just devastating. And even though, married and 2 little kids and, landed on my feet overall, it was emotionally really, really tough because it regressed me back to being, a little skinny, nerdy, bullied kid who had found a way out of all that by just being really good at stuff. And now here I had this massive public failure. And it took a while. It took me a long time. I got some counseling. I went to something called the Hoffman Institute, which is like a 10-day retreat center where you really get a chance to go deep on stuff, which I highly recommend to anybody. You're doing like art therapy and punching, pillows and all kind of crazy stuff. Just try to get your head back right. And I had the support of a lot of good friends. But it gave me a lot of empathy for people because, when you fall, if I hadn't had all that support, everybody doesn't have Prince call them when they lose their job. And so as tough as that was for me, it ultimately worked out fine. But internally, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, it was hard. And so, I feel for people who have gone through so much worse than I'll ever go through, and heard people holler. And if the Democrats and Republicans get together and they pass bad trade deals and people lose their jobs, and they pass bank deregulation and people lose their homes, and they pass laws to build prisons everywhere and people lose their liberties, and they pass support for dumb wars overseas and people lose their lives, at some point hurt people holler. And you're going to get these movements like Black Lives Matter and the Tea Party and Occupy Wall Street and Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. And it's up to people who maybe have benefited more than we've been hurt by all these policies to listen and to understand and to try to figure out a way to make things better, not just to turn our nose up and say, oh, those stupid Bernie Sanders people, those stupid Donald Trump people, those Black Lives Matter kids are terrible, and never listen to the pain underneath. And so that's really kind of what motivated me to write the book.
And a couple of rapid fire questions to wind us up here. What book are you reading right now? Do you have time?
Homo Deus, this book about how humans are, kind of basically melding in with technology and becoming almost godlike. It's called Homo Deus. It's a very powerful book.
And if you were to sum it up, one thing that keeps you up at night, I mean, it's probably pretty obvious given your what you've just said. But what does keep you up at night?
Democracies can fail. Most democracies have failed. And so I think both sides need to look in the mirror, Republicans and Democrats. You look around the world right now, you've got Putin, you've got China, you've got ISIS, you've got, a tilt toward authoritarianism around the world, and these new nationalisms and populisms bubbling up everywhere. Do we want to go along with that trend and become a more authoritarian, more divided country, or do we want to actually show that in a crisis, we don't have to turn on each other, we can turn to each other, use the genius of every kind of human ever born, which is what America is, every kind of human ever born in one country, and, prove that democracy can work. So that's my main commitment is to stick up for democracy in a time when it's not in favor.
Wow. Democracies can fail. It's such a strong, powerful statement, and I'm just grateful for what you're doing. So last question, what would you tell your younger self in terms of advice?
Oh, geez. Eat better, get more sleep, go to the gym more. Mainly that, like Twinkies are not food. Burritos are not for breakfast.
So when you're in a pickle, you have something that goes wrong. Do you have a comfort food that you turn to? Is it Twinkies?
Oh, well, not Twinkies, but not much better. I mean, I have a terrible sweet tooth. I'm really trying this year to break out of that. Look, man, I'm proud of my younger self. I mean, I wish I had a little bit better sense and a little bit more. I don't even say that. Like, when I was young and left wing and radical and fighting the system, and I'm glad I did all that stuff because it gives me a way to identify with rebels all over the world, no matter what side they are, left, right. I understand how you can just feel so left out and angry with the failures of your country that you can get way out there. But I also know how important it is to come back home and to take up the mantle of your parents and your grandparents and your great-grandparents to try to make the country work. I can't just be F America all the time, left or right. At some point, it's got to be fix America, and it's doable. And we got great people here, but I think for me, my younger self, he wouldn't have listened to me anyway on the political moderation side. So I would just say, please, for God's sakes, eat better, and go to the gym, and try not to leave your 40-year-old self with like so many problems.
Fair enough. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. And it means a lot to me to get a chance. The great thing about podcasts is that you actually can have a real discussion, because even radio, they're jumping in and out of commercials and they gotta try to whip it up and make it entertaining, and it's like, let's just have like a real dinner table conversation, and I appreciate the opportunity.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. We tackle the most taboo topics on the Why Not Now show. Oftentimes, you're hearing guests share things they've never shared before. In the spirit of things we don't typically talk about, you should know that the Why Not Now show is supported by Poo-Pourri. Yep, the original before you go toilet spray. It's magic. My friends at Poo-Pourri have literally taken the smell out of you know what. This pure blend of essential oils stops bathroom odor before it begins. Visit poopourri.com, and Why Not Now listeners get 20% off with code Why Not Now. That's all one word. As I mentioned at the top of the show, I also recently spoke with my friend Jen Byrne. She shares her experience and thoughts after surviving the Las Vegas mass shooting last week. Jen is a journalist, writer, and a publicist, and her entire story was also told in Cosmopolitan. Here's Jen as she shares what it was like as she was running from the shooting.
The whole fight or flight thing, it's just, you just do it. Wasn't even thinking about it, but I did think I shouldn't jump off the platform and I'll go down the stairs. And so I was cognizant enough that I was making strategic decisions and aware I was making strategic decisions. And of course I was scared, but I was thinking, this is really happening. Like, there's guns firing at us. But I didn't have any, God, if I make it through this, I'm going to do this, or any of those moments. It was like eerily calm, like just focused on getting somewhere away from the guns.
Almost like you probably didn't have time to even process feelings.
Like, I didn't feel anything physically. I didn't feel anything mentally. I was just like, you just heard the guns and you just knew you had to run.
And you were in a VIP just off the side of the stage, right? A VIP tent?
It was next to VIP. It was Malibu Rum had an activation where they had a platform and a little tiki bar.
And you were going to go down, though, during Jason's performance and decided not to?
Kenya loves Jason Aldean, and Kenya likes being in the front of the crowd for the shows. So the night before, for Sam Hunt, we were three back from the stage, behind to the left of the stage, behind a middle rail. I spoke to girls later that night that were exactly where we were the night before, and the person next to her in front of her got killed by ricocheting bullets off that gate. And they were third row back to the left of the stage, exactly where we were. So, and that's where we planned to go. After we watched Jake Cohen, we said we'll go back to where we were the night before. And then I don't know why, we got our coconuts with coconut water. None of us were even drinking. And we decided, let's just stay here and dance on the stairs. But it probably saved our life.
And then you got separated, right?
We got separated right away. I think it was the first round of gunfire. We thought it was a helicopter that might have hit the equipment, or that it was pyrotechnics in the back of the stage where we couldn't see because we were at side stage. So we just kept dancing, and Jason Aldean kept playing. And then the second round, we thought it was a sound issue, and it happened with Radiohead at Coachella this year, and that sounded awful too. So we thought everything was okay. And then when the third round started, someone screamed, "Get down!" And so we went up. We were staggered on the staircase. We must have just thrown our coconuts and all just laid down on the platform, and it didn't stop. So the guy said, "Get up and run." And one of my friends jumped off the back of the platform, and my other friend and I walked down the stairs, and then we went out the back. We were near a back exit, or I guess it was an exit. It was a fence, and people knocked on the fence, and we all ran in 3 different directions.
And you were by yourself, right, then, as you ran toward the hotel?
Yeah,
Hooters.
I stopped and looked for them for a minute, and then it started again, and someone screamed at me, "Run," and I ran. So that was an eerie part, just being by yourself through all of it.
Oh, yeah. And running down those long Vegas streets.
Yeah, I went the back off the strip, and then I debated running towards the open field or to Hooters was the only real venue on that side I could see at first. So I went there. And I was, guess what, the first one, I was with people when we went into the parking garage and then down a hallway when we got in. But the people must have left. They went left down another hallway, went right into the casino. And I think I was one of the first people in the casino there, because the dealers, everyone looked at me like I was crazy. Because I sat down, and that's when it started to hit me, and I started getting really shaken up. And I took out my phone to text my family, and then just people ran in and said, "The shooter's here, get down." And that was almost scarier for me because you're so exposed. The Hooters casino is a pretty small casino. So if they walked in, there's no chance. And so it was just so close, and you knew what was happening then. Mm-hmm. So that was scary, just hiding under the blackjack table, thinking there was a shooter in the casino. And then when I ran to the staircase, someone yelled at me to get down, but I didn't want to be in that casino. So I ran up the stairs, and the whole time we were in the bathroom, we thought there was a shooter downstairs.
How long were you in the bathroom for? And that's what was crazy, is all the misinformation. I mean, I even had a friend that I saw on Facebook that was there say, now they're at New York front desk, the New York hotel. And, it's just a product of pure chaos and the misinformation.
So I was in the bathroom with two girls I saw in the hallway, and we got 2 chairs from the ballroom, and we brought them in the bathroom and barricaded ourselves in the bathroom and hid under the sink. And they were local, and they had friends that worked at the police department in dispatch. And dispatch said, there's a shooter at Tropicana, there's a shooter at Bellagio, and a shooter at Paris. So we thought it made sense, because we had thought when the shooting happened, at this point, we thought it was dozens of shooters. So it made sense to us that they would then spread out and go into all the different hotels. So we thought there's a shooter downstairs and in all the hotels. And we decided then that it's probably safest in the bathroom because they're going after mass casualties. They'll probably not go floor to floor, stall to stall. So we decided we were staying there till 8 in the morning. And we didn't care who came to the door, because people kept trying the door, and I'm sure there's people looking to hide someplace too. But we were too scared to open the door. And then there was this commotion in the hallway, and we heard commotion downstairs. And we just stayed until someone in the hallway said, everyone come out and come downstairs. It's over. The firemen and police want to get everyone back to where they need to go. So we heard other people that sounded like just young, regular people all start going downstairs. We peeked our head out, and it was just a regular guy. And it turned out other people had made a barricade in the hallway that went to the guest rooms with furniture from the ballroom. And they all came out. But we went downstairs. They were just doing sweeps of the hotel to get everyone in one place, because you weren't allowed out of the hotel. I mean, we weren't allowed out of the hotel for 3 hours when I left, when we still weren't allowed out of the hotel. But I tried to go back upstairs, and they told me I wasn't allowed to.
This is obviously a horrific experience, and you're a couple days out now, and I've seen, your posts and starting discussion around gun safety. And it sounds like you've been doing a lot of research, even though you're already focused on this issue before. Speaking out and actually sharing your story is, I think, extremely powerful. So thank you so much for doing this. And speaking with Van Jones earlier, he said, one of the things you can do is write a letter to your editor. Well, this is the new form of that kind of, right? Is sharing your story. Right. So what now? And how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm trying to be self-aware that people do say I could be repressing something and not running and hiding from it. I mean, I do hear, I'll never get that sound of machine gun fire out of my head, I don't think. But otherwise, I'm so humbled by the outpouring of love and support that I really think when you're just showered with so much love, it kind of washes away the fear a bit. It's not like something can be done to undo it. And I'm always a really big person. If you can't change something, move forward. But I can't not acknowledge what happened. So my way of dealing with it, I think, is just taking that energy, and instead of it being fear or sadness, turning it into productive change. So I'm trying to give myself a few days before I do hardcore study and learn about everything. Mm-hmm. And now just reactively doing what I can while people are asking for interviews. At first, my first reaction was I don't want to do any interviews. not because I didn't want to talk about it, but I felt like it was exploitive. I don't want to just go out there and be a face of this because I wasn't a hero. I didn't get shot, thankfully. I just happened to be there. But then I realized it's a platform to go out when all these shows are saying this is no time to talk about gun control. It made me so angry because it's exactly the time to talk about gun control. So I just wanted to go out and be a voice for that. And since I did get shot at, all these people talking about that guns need to be legal, I have my right to guns, he had his right to guns, tell me that to my face. So I just figured that I had to not think about anything and not think about myself for a minute and just be reactionary.
Well, it's brave still to talk about it. And it's, people have such heated and passionate viewpoints on gun laws.
Yeah.
Yet at the same time, there are different variations of that. And what we're talking about with this bump stock equipment that I've learned more about in the last couple of days than I ever imagined. I never even knew about it, right?
Yeah.
You can buy it for what, $99 on
$99.
the corner in Vegas, and all of a sudden your weapon turns into an automatic, absolute evil machine. And
even the NRA said today they're going to consider banning bump stock because even the NRA doesn't know why a civilian needs it.
And that's amazing. And I saw that too. And having them even acknowledge that additional regulations need to be made it's such an obvious move. But that and background checks and the types of weapons that are even available.
That there should be something that tracks how many guns a person owns.
Mm-hmm.
And there should be a limit on how many guns a person needs to own. A person should not be able to own enough guns to staff an army. Like, why? He had 24 guns at least. And that's just what was in the room. Or in one room, he had 23 guns. In both his houses, he had over 40 guns. How can the government think it's within your rights to own over a whole arsenal of firearms?
Yeah.
It just defies logic to me.
Your headline of your Cosmo piece of I felt like a target in a video game. And that's just some of these solutions might be half solutions or the lowest hanging fruit, but they have to be taken, even if there are some bigger issues here. It's
crazy
just
people are going to do crazy things. I'm not saying that we could stop that from happening. But what I'm saying is just on every level, from a one-person domestic violence thing to gangs to something like this, if you take away, guns are the low-hanging fruit in those situations. So if you make it harder for them to get guns, you will save lives. I don't see an argument against that.
And in this case, they were all bought legally. It's just, it's absolutely incredible. Well, thank you so much for sharing and bringing more light to, this issue. And also, hopefully, it will allow people to think hard about their stance on things as well.
But the good thing is, in face of this, there's more good people than bad, because it's amazing how many people stopped and helped other people that night. How many men shielded women they didn't know. Somebody helped me through the fence and put their arm around me when they saw me by myself at the casino. Generally, people were just super helpful to each other. That was nice.
It is an amazing community too, and having so many friends there, the immediate overflow of people wanting to donate blood and bringing things to the first responders and to the hospitals and food. And I've got a lot of chef friends who have been working nonstop, no sleep. And it is a tough community. I mean, tough people. So, but thank you again for sharing, Jen. And we just wish you a lot of healing energy.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. Hit me up on social media to let me know what you think. I'm at Amy Jo Martin on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I want to hear your Why Not Now moments so I can share them on the show. Just send me a note to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com. For show notes and other offers, you can visit amyjomartin.com/whynotnow. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my email newsletter for exclusive content and announcements. A big thanks to Rock Salt Music for all of the tunes by the talented John Coggins, and of course a hat tip to Richard Brewer for editing and producing the show. I'll see you next time, and until then, why not now?